and we're streaming.
Good morning, everyone. I am Bernadette Norris Weeks, and I am a board member of Roots List Florida. I am also the founder and one of the directors of the Women of Color Empowerment Institute, Inc., which is a sponsor of this forum. Roots List helps progressive women run inspiring local campaigns that win. We identify, recruit, train, mentor, and elect democratic, pro-choice women to all levels of office in Florida. The Women of Color Empowerment Institute is a 501c3 organization with a mission to enhance and expand leadership by women of color. So thank you all for tuning in this morning via Facebook, Zoom, and other social media platforms. You will hear from some really highly accomplished women this morning who are Roots List supported candidates and who will also be able to address, among other things, issues surrounding the new state of Florida executive order requiring that schools reopen this fall, despite the fact that, of course, COVID numbers keep climbing. And in Florida, there were just yesterday 7,000 new COVID cases. So we really look forward to hearing from these accomplished women on these topics of reopening schools. Now, Dr. Fauci and other experts have said that schools should reopen based upon the infection rates in communities. However, with the new order entered just a couple of days ago, local school districts will not have the option to make decisions based upon their local communities. And so we'll be talking about how to navigate some of these issues that are really important for our communities. So our thought leaders today are Sarah Leonardi, Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel, and Dr. Mara Zapata. So we will hear from all of them, and I will do some brief introductions of each right now. So Sarah Leonardi, she is running for the Broward County School Board District 3. Sarah has been teaching in Broward's high schools for almost a decade. As a child living abroad, especially in Egypt, she saw the importance of access to good education, and she became a teacher like her mother, and she wanted to make a difference in this world. So she knows firsthand what it's like in the classroom in terms of teaching and what kind of things need to be changed in our school system. And she's excited about her run for office. She attended the University of Miami, where she earned a bachelor's of science in education. She has been working as a public school teacher for 7 years, primarily teaching high school English. And in 2016, she was voted Teacher of the Year at Coconut Creek High School. So welcome, Sarah. We look forward to hearing from you. Our next speaker and guest today will be Dr. Mara Zapata. She is currently a Miami Springs City Councilwoman and is now running for school board seat 5 in Miami. Dr. Zapata was born in Cuba. She arrived in the US at age 2. She attended Florida International University, earning both a bachelor's in education and a master's degree in educational leadership. She also earned a doctorate in science education from Florida State University, Gold Knolls. In addition to her teaching experience, Zapata has worked as a curriculum specialist for Miami-Dade County Public Schools. She also has served as an administrator at Miami-Dade College, working as a chairperson of K-12 teacher education programs. And she said that she decided to dedicate the last 30 years of her life to helping children receive the best education possible, working with new teachers to help them be most qualified and prepared teachers as they can be. So we welcome Dr. Zapata. The next person is actually the sister of my law school roommate, and she is Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel, and her educational background includes she has worked in the field of education since she graduated in 1990 from Vanderbilt University with the BS in elementary education. She started her career as a 4th grade teacher at the original Audubon Park Elementary before leaving to UNC Chapel Hill to earn her master's in education, literacy studies. She later became she later earned her doctorate degree, her PhD in curriculum and instruction. She is a former state legislator, and as a state legislator, she served on the K through 12 education and education appropriations subcommittees. As a member of the school board, she has worked alongside her colleagues in Tallahassee to influence legislation that directly affects students and teachers in Orange County public schools, and I would dare to say throughout the state of Florida. So let me welcome all of you. Thanks for being a part of this forum today. And if you're just tuning in, again, this is Wise Women Wednesday, and we have some really wise women that you will hear more from. So let's jump right in and talk about some of the big elephant in this Zoom room, which is the governor's order to, well, actually an order, but it's a state order to reopen schools. And what I'd like to hear from each of you is really what you all are hearing based on your experiences as in your various professions as teachers and administrative people, what concerns you all may have regarding this return to school campuses. And let's start with Dr. Sarah. Well, actually, Sarah, I'm giving you a doctorate, but so that may be good news for you. But I will start with Sarah Leonardi, who again is running for School Board of Broward County, seat 3.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing that up, Bernadette, and thank you for moderating this. This is just an incredible opportunity. You know, I was actually on a town hall for our teachers union on Monday when that order came down. And I have to say that the educators I was on the call with were very upset. I was proud to see that our superintendent pushed back on that order. You know, with the cases growing exponentially every day, I don't see how we fully reopen schools. And I believe, you know, our superintendent said, you know, we teach science in schools and there's no reason for us to not follow that science. And science is telling us that it's not safe to have huge numbers of people in a school together at the same time. I'm also really worried about this issue of local control and home rule. You know, Republicans love to talk about local control, but it appears that our legislature is doing everything it can, and our governor and our commissioner of education, they're doing everything they can to eliminate home rule. And, you know, this really opens the door to a lot of concerning issues around, you know, how much power do local school districts have in terms of determining their own curriculum and things like that. So this has really opened a can of worms, and I'm hearing from educators specifically that they are very scared about this order.
Thank you. And we'll move to Dr. Mara Zapata, and we're wondering from your standpoint, what are you hearing regarding this order? And do you have any concerns about this one-size-fits-all order from the state of Florida?
Yes, thank you. So thank you for the opportunity, first of all, to be here today. But yes, I definitely have concerns, and I have been speaking with parents, I've been speaking with teachers, and they absolutely share those concerns. We can't implement a one-size-fits-all and decide we're going to open schools, all schools, regardless of, you know, even the infrastructure of the schools themselves physically. We're talking about a virus that now there's evidence is airborne, or airborne contracting it by airborne. And we have high schools, modern buildings with no windows. We have thousands of students in those buildings. I think that our district has made an effort, and I can talk a little bit more about that in terms of the options that teachers and parents have. But the fact that this has come down as a mandate at a time when we're really in phase 1. We are not in phase 2, given the numbers. And that mandate is more so, that executive order is more so looking at it like if we are in phase 2. And given the numbers, we are not. So to have that evidence and say that there is a mandate, and like Sarah mentioned, that we don't have local control, to me is ludicrous, to say the least. And it's an insult to the intelligence and professionalism of a school system that's very dedicated, teachers that don't make what they should make, and already sacrifice because of the passion they have for teaching and their commitment to the children in our communities to step in and do what they have to do. Having said that, I also think that this furthers the, this whole idea that public education is supposed to serve all. And what's happening now is that the ones that are more highly affected are the ones with the least choice. And they're the ones at the lower level of our economic, reality in our society. So again, these are parents that have less of a choice. They have to go back to work, and they are feeling like they have to abide by a choice that's not a really good one for the safety of their children. So
those are really important considerations. And so you've heard from Miami-Dade County and someone in Broward County, and now we're going to move to Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel in Orange County. And what are you hearing in your area, and what concerns do you have specifically?
Thank you, Bernadette, and thanks for letting us talk to folks today. The Orange County School Board had an 11-hour meeting yesterday about this, and it was striking to me that the governor and the commissioner of education would mandate that we go back to school in August amid concerns in South Florida and in Orange County, especially when it appears to be such a politically motivated move. When the governor won't even mandate masks throughout the state, he's not doing what he needs to do. So it's not just a matter of local control versus state control, which is an issue, but is this, it goes back to Trump and the election and DeSantis, and it's hard to get out from under those decisions. But we need to find a way to balance all the different needs. We have to get kids back to school, but in a measured approach that looks at science and the data and our local communities. And I know it's important for kids. I know it's important for the economy. It's important for teachers. But you cannot mandate when there's a pandemic raging.
That's true. Well, there are a lot of women out there, men out there who may be listening and will listen to this video. And what I'm wondering from you all as parents or people who are in the community and hearing from constituents and folks who will be constituents, what does this mean really for oftentimes women who have to choose between their families, the safety of their families, and their economic stability? What advice would you give for women in particular to balance all of those things as their kids may be put in harm's way?
Would you like me to try to answer that one?
Anybody can start.
Okay, well, I have a daughter who's still in our high school, and when I'm thinking of practical matters, what kept coming back to me was when I had my kids in playgroup when we were younger, or ways that we could take turns so that someone else could go and focus on their job, even if it's at home. But that might be an idea for women helping women who do work from home or do have kids at home and have to go back to online schooling. Is there a way that we can kind of pool some resources or share that burden? Because women definitely are more impacted by this decision. They are, even though times have changed and we've modernized and men have taken up more of responsibility of parenting, so much still falls to women when it comes to their education. So I don't have an easy answer, but it is something that we have to be cognizant of.
Yes. Dr. Zapata, what do you think about that question?
Well, I've spoken to a lot of young families who have children, especially at the elementary level, for example, which I think is those parents are very much concerned because of the children's not fully understanding, the importance of the masks and everything else, and how they interact with each other. But those parents, for the most part that I'm talking to, have households where the father also takes a very active role. And I don't think that in this case, even though I've been a staunch women's advocate in terms of these kind of issues, I think we're in a place right now where many families, especially the younger families that have those elementary, the fathers are taking a more proactive role, which is good, and that helps. I also think that women, mothers who, even though there may not be a lot, I remember those play groups when my kids were young too, and we used to juggle things between mothers. But right now you have mothers that come together in different groups and they are helping each other, whether it be Girl Scouts groups and different things in the community, and they're sharing what their predicaments are. And I see that that's happening. So ultimately, yes, the women are looking at it as, yes, even if my husband helps or somebody else in the family helps, it ultimately falls on them. And yeah, they are concerned. They're very concerned. I am happy that we do have some options for the parents in terms of the different going back to school options that the district has proposed, and I can talk about that later, about what they're doing here in Dade County. But it's an issue. It's an issue, and there is concern.
Thank you. And Sarah, Leonardi, let's hear from you on that issue.
Yeah, so, like a lot of different systemic issues, this pandemic has really amplified the lack of affordable childcare for families and the undue burden on women, especially when it comes to childcare. And, we saw Florida State University release, a statement saying that employees were going to have to figure out childcare. They would no longer be able to work from home and take care of their children. And it shows a real lack of understanding what it's like to be a woman and a parent in leadership circles. And at the same time, we talk about, I've also talked to a lot of parents, especially of younger children, who are at their wits' end with trying to work from home full time and help with their child's schooling. Because if you're a kindergartner, you have to be constantly engaged. And at the same time of that, we have a situation where, parents are concerned about socialization and kids want to get back for socialization and being around their friends. And if we are to safely reopen, a lot of that won't be in place. So, I think, again, this has revealed a situation in which we need to have some serious conversations about affordable childcare and more flexible policies at different corporate levels for allowing for parents to work from home and also care for their children. And unfortunately, for the foreseeable future, we're going to have to see some compromise at a lot of levels from the teachers and the parents. And this is obviously, we talked about how distance learning wasn't distance learning, it was crisis learning. And it definitely feels like that's going to continue for some time now.
Okay. And if you're just joining us, you're welcome to Wise Women Wednesday. This is the Back to School COVID edition, and we welcome you to be a part of this this forum where these really smart women are talking about a very critical and relevant issue that we're dealing with right now. I want to move on and just dig a little bit deeper into what Sarah was just talking about a moment ago, and that is, what do you see as the greatest impact on children and families with less economic mobility? And so the least of these, in other words, people are really suffering. We're at a point where folks have lost their jobs or they've been furloughed and they don't really have a lot of economic options. And so what do you see? How do you propose these women that may be listening deal with their situations as well? And we'll start with Dr. Zapata.
In terms of the population with less mobility, um, you know, there's a reality to all, but there are statistics that show that children right now, especially in those homes, that there are additional stressors because of that lack of mobility, lack the economic pressures and everything else, that leads more to children's abuse. People are, um, you know, the ability for the parent to care for themselves in the midst of what they're going through, and then the children who lack that structure and that routine that the school provides for them, that the parent now doesn't, it's extremely difficult. And just for the sake of understanding the reality of those families, I have a very difficult time understanding why we haven't put forward mechanisms in place to address those things that are pressures that are affecting parents and ultimately trickle down to affecting the children. Not saying that the parents, you know, are intentionally, they're on survival mode. They're in absolute survival mode. They're doing the best that they can. I have worked in all different environments in terms of schools in affluent neighborhoods, schools in the inner city, in terms of neighborhoods that are very deprived. And I have yet to meet a parent who doesn't want to do the best for their child. But you know, it's let's go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If your basic needs are not met in terms of security, ability to provide food and everything else, and then we're expecting those parents in that in that circumstance, in that reality that only they know all too well, to step up and establish what the kind of routine that a teacher can establish in a classroom, that in itself is not even possible. So it's a very complex question because there's a lot to be considered. You know, we can look at it from different angles, but there's a lot to be considered. And the childcare issue has always been an issue in terms of the affordability and the addressing that in terms of equity as well. Equity is a huge problem in public education or serving the highest needs of our communities.
Thank you. And Karen, what do you think about that topic, and what would your advice be to women who maybe, and families that may be dealing with less economic means?
Well, like Dr. Zapata said, that's their increased rate risk of abuse. And when they're not in school, we don't have the ability to intervene as like we would normally. And they're facing hunger, homelessness, the stress of all of this as well, and they're regressing with their education. I wouldn't say falling behind, but the achievement gaps are going to grow. And those are the ones I'm most concerned about getting back into school. We have got to get children who are in greatest need back into our classes, and we can do that safely. We can do that with social distancing. We can do that. It's going to cost more money as far as getting kids on buses that are spaced out enough. But that is, if we don't intervene and bring those children back, then we're going to face decades or generations of harm to them. So we've got to find a way to bring them back to our schools, because as we've recognized, schools do so much more than just educate our kids. We really take care of the families and provide so much social service backbone for so many that it's imperative. And so our challenge is, how do we do it safely?
Very good. And Sarah Leonardi.
Yeah. Again, a really important question. And again, this pandemic has really highlighted already systemic issues that people, teachers especially, have been crying out about for some time. I think that Broward County Public Schools did a really good job of distributing technology and making internet available to our students. And I'm really proud of that because it really helped with the technology gap in our schools. And I see that Paula commented in the chat about partnering with community organizations like the Boys and Girls Club and organizations that did have to stay open during this pandemic and provide childcare to communities. I think that's really important. And I think, again, this is not a situation where schools can operate in silos, so that we do need to reach out to community groups. And there are, a lot of free resources out there, and we as leaders need to do a better job of communicating that.
So here's a question for all of you, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on kids wearing masks. You're talking about 6 hours a day. I can barely, keep mine on the entire time when I'm in my office, and I'm wondering if you all have any thoughts about how kids will navigate that very difficult task. Dr. Castor-Dentel.
Well, that came up at our meeting yesterday too, and I know there are some people who say that kids won't be able to handle that, and there might be some kids who have some sensory issues who really can't wear the mask, but we're going to mandate kids who are 3 and older to wear masks, and I've seen them. They're fully capable of wearing them, and it's not a problem. I know some people have talked about children need to be able to see a teacher's mouth, and that does help with everybody, really. So we've seen that there are some masks that have a covering here, but then there's that plastic area where you can still see the mouth. So there are just creative issues or ideas out there. And then there's also the whole shield, the plastic shield, if we need those. But
is the board going to provide those? Did you all discuss that at all?
We have money that we've allocated to get all of the PPE, the protective gear and masks, and we would be providing those if kids don't have them or teachers don't have them or staff. So yes, that's a necessity. And I'm glad that our board and the staff and our superintendent is in agreement.
And we will move to Sarah Leonardi. Tell us what your thoughts are on that topic.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I got
No, that's okay. With respect to mask, what do you think about kids having to wear that mask at least 6 hours a day?
Yeah, so I teach high school. I teach high school English, 10th grade, and it's a real struggle to get kids to wear IDs around their necks, let alone a mask. And, at the high school level, they have a much better understanding of their surroundings. When you look at elementary school children, I don't see how that works. But as Dr. Zapata brought up, there are conversations now, there's data coming out about how the virus is aerosolized and how a mask is a really good way to prevent that. And that's why we have these mask orders down in South Florida. So, I would love to see having children wear masks as much as possible, even when seated at their desks. But the reality is that might be really difficult, especially at the elementary school level, to enforce.
And Dr. Zapata.
Yes, I definitely, it's a concern. The masks are a concern. I think that definitely they should be worn, but it's going to be, again, more challenging for the younger students. Not an impossibility. I think that the teachers also have to be very masterful, as teachers are. Yeah, I'm biased. I love teachers. But the reality is that you have to have conversations with students. They've gone through a lot. We have to understand that they're coming back. When they come back with mentally, they're in a different place. They've gone through a lot. Their whole structure has been interrupted. And now you're asking them to come back to a social setting that they're dying to, in many ways, get back to, but they're super restricted. So you have to have them buy into it, just like when a teacher imposes rules. Well, when you impose them, then the rules to be broken. So I think the children need to have, you need to have a conversation with them first and own that idea that it's important to wear masks. And through professional development and things that we work with teachers, we need to guide them in how to accomplish that. So for example, to tell students, you know, it's so great that we're all together now. We've missed each other, and let's talk about why. I want you to tell me why you think it's important that we wear masks, to get that buy-in from them. So I taught for many years at the elementary level, and again, in all settings, and I got no different results from an inner city setting or from another setting in terms of kids. If they know that you care about them, that's all that you need to get them to buy into what you're proposing. So that's going to be, you're going to have to preface that even happening by having the teacher take that time to do that. That's my personal view. If I were going back into the classroom, that's what I would emphasize doing day one, and celebrate the fact that we're the smartest class because we're all wearing our masks. So
yes, very good. That would be a very good suggestion. Competition's always a motivator. I would like to ask this question of Dr. Castor-Dentel, and you're the only sitting school board member right now, and you may have some thoughts on this issue. We do have some data that has come in from the spring and before the closure of schools. And so we know that that data may have been helpful in teaching us some things about how we proceed into the fall school year, just really in the month with handling COVID-19. And so from your standpoint, what are some of the helpful things that you've seen that can be applied to going into this fall school year?
Well, with not talking about the coronavirus itself, but about how students were doing when they were on the computers, I think one of the things that we learned is that parents and families need much more support and training in the technology. And like when a high school student might have 7 classes all online, they found that teachers often operate their classes online very differently from one another. And it was very challenging to learn the different formats, expectations, and the communication was difficult. They didn't know where they were supposed to contact teachers, or teachers couldn't always reach out to parents. And we learned that that communication piece and assumptions that people made about what kids know how to do made it very challenging. So I think we're going to have to do a better job of having our teachers reaching out to our parent population even more, and not just relying on their instruction on the computer when we do the virtual aspect, but really bringing in parents and explaining how they can help their child. That's just one aspect I think it was important.
Mm-hmm. Different question for you, Dr. Zapata, and I'm wondering, we talked a little bit about it, we touched on it during this forum in terms of how the state's not really doing as much as it could be doing with instituting a statewide mask requirement for everybody, for all counties. Wondering if you had the opportunity to speak directly to the governor right now, what would you tell the governor and the folks who work with him about the need for a statewide mask order and requirement?
well, I definitely, again, we need to go back to the data in terms of the health professionals that have presented, you know, the reality of this pandemic and how it's spread, and ask, how can you not mandate that? And who is going to take on the responsibility of, you know, further spread of this virus to people that are, one, the most vulnerable, and two, I want to say, as far as our children, the most innocent in terms of, and parents who really don't have a choice. So in addition to that, we have to consider, the fact that we have teachers to consider as well. We have teachers who are have some compromised health in terms of their being more susceptible to what would happen if they contracted the virus. But they also have elderly parents also that they go back home to, and they have young children. So the very young children, a lot of times in our classrooms, are data has shown that young kids a lot of times are asymptomatic and can spread it, and our teachers are coming into classrooms and then going back to their families. Um, it's I think that if we don't take those precautions, we're just asking for this to go at a rapid rate of the disease spreading, and I think it's irresponsible. How can you not mandate masks if we know that it clearly prevents the transmission? To me, it's like ignoring the needs of the constituents that you serve.
So there you have it, Governor DeSantis. If you're listening, or if your staff's listening, please consider mandating masks. So the next question is for Sarah Leonardi, and I wanted to ask you, you're in a unique situation in that you're in the school, you're teacher of the year, you're right there in the classroom, and I'm sure you've heard from some of your fellow teachers, as I have, that they don't think they're going to go back necessarily in the fall because they may fear for their own lives. And specifically, a teacher has reported that the Department of Education is asking school personnel to sign a legal document absolving them of responsibility if they get sick and waive any rights that they may have to workers' compensation. What are your thoughts on that measure that seems to be floating around?
Yeah, so I personally have not received anything, but the fact that someone has is atrocious. We got into teaching to, hopefully change the world and to serve kids. And we knew that it would be tough, and we knew we would have to pay out of pocket for supplies, and we knew we weren't going to get paid a lot of money. But I can speak for myself. I didn't get into teaching to sacrifice my life. And I don't think it's fair to, expect other teachers to be martyrs. To ask that of people who give up so much every day, it's unconscionable.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And I'm going to ask the same question of Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I've talked to so many teachers, and they are also rightly fearful of going back into just walking into a disease. Our public health director was at our meeting yesterday, and he said something like that struck me. He said that the disease doesn't spread, we spread the disease. So we as a school district have to do everything within our power to keep our teachers safe. And I don't think, even if we did every measure to do that, I don't think our teachers and staff have confidence in our ability to keep everybody safe. Another item that came up that I'm familiar with is our ability to keep our school sanitized. Mm-hmm. We already have a shortage of custodial workers. We often have 3 or 4 positions at a school, and sometimes we only have 1 custodian show up. So the teachers were very skeptical that if we bring kids back to the classroom, would we be able to actually make it sanitized and use all the factors for cleaning and making sure all the surfaces are wiped down. They just don't have the confidence that we're able to do that. And I have to agree. I don't know who will be supervising the custodial staff and ensuring that every surface is cleaned in between students. Um, and I don't think we can guarantee that for our teachers. And until we do, I am also fearful of bringing them back to the classroom.
Thank you. And this really is a comment, and it's for anyone. And I want to recognize some of the chat comments that have been made because some of them are very thoughtful. So here is one from Susan, and she says, what is realistic to be planning for August? I have been helping our daughter who works from home. I see my help may transition to distance learning, but I can see that the months of no social contact is taking its toll. For all of the mothers who may not have help and may not have jobs that provide working from home, I worry greatly for those children and mothers and families. Anyone care to respond to Susan's comment?
I can speak as a mother of a teenager. My 16-year-old has relied on using TikTok and staying up late at night, which I've allowed her to keep her phone at night, and so that she can communicate with her fellow teenagers and her friends. And I tried to give her outlets for socializing, having a friend over where they stay apart helps. But again, unless we are doing a better job of mandating masks in the state and doing everything we can, then that's just going to have to be, put aside. I do know that our school district did commit to mandating masks, and we discussed what happens if a parent who is against masks tells their child, I don't care what the school says, you're not going to wear a mask. And our attorney let us know that we are able to mandate masks. And even though we coach them and, and teach them to wear a mask, if they refuse or the parents refuse, then we can refuse their entry.
Interesting. Interesting. Those are things that we're going to be talking more about, I'm sure, and what that means for, rights. Probably you'll have the ACLU jumping in at some point on that issue. I wanted to also get in another comment from Joanne, and she has a great comment here that anyone can jump in on. Could we hear more about how to address the impact of this on teachers, the great majority of whom are women? Teachers who have underlying conditions that the CDC says put them right at high risk and afraid to go to school. Not only are they afraid every day that they might catch COVID-19, they are also afraid, particularly because if they do catch COVID-19, they bring it home in cases also whether their spouse or children may have underlying conditions that put them in high risk. In both situations, they do need an alternative, such as doing virtual teaching. Should they be required to teach in the brick and mortar situation in elementary school, taking into account the conversation taking place about whether or not students will actually wear masks? And so I think that's really thoughtful, and I did not want to leave today without having maybe a couple of you weigh in on that comment.
I would love to address that.
Please.
This is something that I've been fighting for this whole time, which is that teachers' voices need to be included in this conversation. We hear a lot from the governor about, kids don't get it or kids can't spread it, which is also, like, on a side note, not based on science. But more than just kids exist in a school. You have clerical staff, you have teachers, you have bus drivers and custodians, and we cannot ignore the risk to their health. And actually, I would argue that it's a moral obligation that is at the center of these discussions, is the health and well-being of the folks who make our schools run every single day. I would really like to see, and I know other school board members have argued for this, a real investment in training with distance learning platforms, because it was a new experience for a lot of us at the beginning back in March. But that's not going to be an excuse in August if we have to continue distance learning. And so, to Joanne's point, I think, again, there needs to be a real focus and investment in these distance learning platforms, and the health and well-being of the people who work in our schools has to be one of the very first things that we talk about when we talk about reopening schools. So thank you, Joanne.
Dr. Zapata, any thoughts on that?
I will say that, and I had mentioned before that I have spoken to a lot of teachers that have those concerns, and it's unfortunate that they have to be under the stress of, am I going to be made to do this? But thankfully, we in Miami-Dade County, I have to say, have a very strong teachers union that has a very good relationship in terms of dialogue with our school board and superintendent, and other unions as well, because we talked about the custodians and the AFL, the AFSCME, and AFL-CIO that also oversee some of those personnel. They also have a lot of dialogue and a lot of support in terms of having those voices heard. And so I know that our school district is taking all of that very seriously. As far as the remote instruction and the challenges, I mean, that goes without saying. There were some teachers that were very adept and others that were lost. And they were faced from one day to another, because it happened very fast, to have to go and start teaching remotely. So our district has also already been offering through this time remote sessions for our teachers, especially now, to prepare them to better deliver that. And not only better deliver them, but deliver it with consistency. Because from school to school and teacher to teacher, parents were experiencing different things. If they had kids at different levels, oh, this teacher is only doing like so many minutes of so many times a week, where this other teacher, and then the parents were having to juggle their own work with that. So the district has listened to all of that and has already addressed taking those measures. So in terms of improving it. We also have different options in terms of the return to school. So our teachers who feel that they are have compromised health in terms of being more susceptible if they get the virus, have the option of teaching remotely. And there is surveys that have gone out to parents, and all of that is taken into account in terms of our plan to go back. So yes, we'll open, but we'll open with different types of offerings depending on the teachers, the parents. It has to be independently what fits each district and its population best.
Very good. So you've been listening, if you're just joining, to Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel, Dr. Myra Zapata, and Sarah Leonardi. And they've been talking about COVID-19 and back to school. And this is our back to school edition. Roots List is sponsoring this in conjunction with Women of Color Empowerment Institute. So I'd like to give you all a couple of minutes before we conclude to talk about your platforms. You're all Roots List of Florida supported candidates. We're really pleased to support all of you. You're unbelievable. You're doing great things in your community right now. We're really proud of the work you're doing, and we want other people to know about your platform, how they learn about you, how they contact you, and how they support you. And I would also like to add that Roots List is about giving and supporting candidates, and we're at a really critical time in this critical election year that's historic in many different ways. And it is so important that we are able to, as women and as everybody, do all that we can. It's difficult to campaign right now. And I'd like to know from some of you, how are you navigating that even, and how are you getting the word out about your platform? So let's start with Sarah Leonardi, and if you can give us a little bit about your platform and what you're doing and how the people on the line can assist you in Broward.
Thank you so much, Bernadette. I really appreciate this. And you've done such an incredible job with these questions, so thank you. So yeah, my name is Sarah Leonardi. I'm a Broward Schools teacher, and I'm running for the Broward School Board in seat 3. And, you know, my platform is based on my experience as a teacher and what I've seen the needs are with my kids. And so that focuses first and foremost on resources. We've talked about the lack of access to resources.
I'm so happy that you got.
You know, I think that we're seeing how this pandemic amplifies these different issues. And, you know, my assistant principal actually sent an email out a couple weeks ago asking my student club to donate money to purchase PPE for the school. And, you know, that really highlights the lack of resources we have in our schools. And so I think that's really relevant. Another piece that I talk about a lot is the need for mental health services. And I think especially in the wake of this isolation that our kids have been experiencing, it's going to be really necessary. So those are two pieces, obviously, that are so important to me, to my colleagues, and to my students. And as Bernadette alluded to, it is very difficult campaigning. Normally I'd be spending all day this summer knocking on doors, and we had to suspend that. And I have a bunch of volunteers making phone calls to voters instead. So if you're interested in doing that, you can sign up on our website. It's electleonardi.com, and I'll drop it in the chat. And you know, you can also donate at that website as well. It's because we can't knock on doors, you know, campaigning has gotten a lot more expensive. And, you know, when I first decided to run, people said I wouldn't be able to fundraise because I'm a teacher. And so far we've been proving them wrong. So I hope that you all can support a campaign that supports teachers and students and the issues we care about. And thank you so much for this opportunity again today.
Thank you. Really appreciate your being involved. Dr. Zapata.
So first, thank you. And I'm very appreciative to Ruth's List for their support. And absolutely, it's been an honor for me. I felt very proud of the fact that you all have done that. Having said that, I'll just talk a little bit about my platform, which first and foremost, I'm huge on the safety piece in terms of our schools. A lot has happened in South Florida and across the nation, and I've been a huge advocate in terms of school safety. Teachers are a second priority, not second in order, let's not say that, a priority as well, because teachers are close and dear to my heart in terms of not only having been a teacher, but having trained teachers, prepared teachers, and I continue to mentor a lot of the teachers in our district that are exceptional student education teachers. And I have, you know, a huge interest in bringing about further understanding of how our exceptional student population is served and how we lack differentiated instruction in those environments where they're in. But in order to address those things in support of teachers and those students, the other part of my platform is parent advocacy. I think that, you know, parents need to be equipped, need to be empowered, need to be supported to advocate for their children. And a lot of times they're at a loss of what avenue to take to address issues concerning their children. They don't feel that they have the power to do that. And there's no greater reward than helping a parent navigate through the system. And I've been there and done that, from meeting parents at 7 a.m. in the morning in front of a school. Let's go in and let's make this happen. And then once you guide them and they do it, you've opened a door for them and they help other parents. So that's a big part of my platform as well. I'm missing something. What else was part of the question?
Well, I think you've covered a lot. Yes.
I'm just so excited to have been here today and to have you do this for us. This has been great.
Wonderful. We were happy to have you here today, and thank you, and good luck to you in Miami. And Dr. Karen Castor-Dentel, what kind of things are you doing to campaign, and what's your platform?
Thank you, Bernadette, and thank you, Ruth's List. Well, similarly to my fellow candidates, I would like to focus again on our mental health resources for our students. Um, the depression and anxiety is skyrocketing even before the pandemic.
Mhm.
And so mental health, expanding our resources for kids is a priority. Um, Safety for our students was a priority before we had the pandemic. So it's even greater now. We have to focus in a whole different manner. Equity of resources for our students and how we allocate resources across the district is important to me, as well as equality of our students and making sure that all of our students are welcome and respected. And then what might be unique to Orange County schools is the relationships between teachers and the district and employees in the district. There is a breakdown in trust. So I would like to continue to use my perspective as a teacher and my experience on the board to continue to rebuild those relationships, because those are vital. It's how we keep our teachers. It's how we improve instruction. It makes it better for everyone involved. And I would also just run on my record of really being engaged with parents and teachers. I'm lucky that I have some name recognition from being on the school board. So that helps me in campaigning, although I'll be campaigning differently. I won't be going door to door. I will be relying on more Zoom presentations and distance presentations and phone calls and believe it or not, yard signs. In my district, yard signs are a way to communicate as people are actually allowed to drive around the neighborhood. I'm lucky to have the support of a lot of people in my district, and I love my job. I've never loved a job more, and I feel like I'm really making a difference. So that's very rewarding. And I appreciate the support of Ruth's List and the members of Ruth's List. And I do have a website. You can look at more information. It's at Karen4, schoolboard.com. And I appreciate all the help you give. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. That was great. We're really happy again to support each of you. You're amazing women. And just want to say, if you want to find out more about Ruth's List, just go online. It's easy to find. There are other candidates in other areas in addition to these dynamic candidates that Ruth's List is trying to get elected to office. Again, this is a really critical year. We have critical elections coming up. August the 18th is a primary election. August the 18th is a primary election. August the 18th. make sure you mark it down and do everything that you can to get your friends, your neighbors, coworkers, church members, everyone that you know out to vote, because we have to get more progressive women elected to public office all throughout the state. Our schools, traditional public schools as we know it, are under attack. They are under attack from so many different ways. This last legislative session and the one before it were disasters for public school education. So we really need women not only in the school board levels, but also at the state, in the House and Senate, at various levels of government. We want to see women run and be elected to public office. And so look out for different things that Ruth's List will be doing in terms of training. Many of the women that you see in different offices now all around different counties throughout the state of Florida are people who were trained through Ruth's List and supported through Ruth's List. It's a movement. And we ask that you continue to support this movement, continue to support these women, and share this video. I'm sure it will get a whole lot of views by the time your election happens. And so the November election takes place November 3rd. Absentee ballots should be dropping all around. So get those ballots in. You can vote by mail. You can vote early. You can vote on election day, but just make sure that you vote. And so again, I'm Bernadette Norris Weeks. I'm one of the directors of Rootless Florida, and I'm also the founder and one of the directors with Women of Color Empowerment Institute, Inc. We thank you for joining us today, and get out and make sure that you vote. Have a good day.
Thank you, Bernadette. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.